Hello and welcome to episode 89 of our Conversations to Connect, Let's Get Real podcast. Oh boy, that's one powered by Exceptional Connections. I'm Cyndi O'Neill-Dady, the founder and chief connector of Exceptional Connections since 2009. Our conversation to connect today is with the amazing Laurie Thibert joining us from Kirkland, Washington. Welcome, Laurie. So, Lori, I'm excited to discover and discuss your secret sauce for relationships. It's not rocket science, the four-leg recipe for professional relationships to thrive. And then the bonus that you're offering us is it works at home too. And I have your book here, plug for your book. Again, it's not rocket science, the CATR Theory, the four legs of successful professional and personal relationships. And it's a little book, but it is mighty. And I'm excited to be able to peel it back and give our listeners an opportunity to learn more about your amazing theory. So, excuse me, before we dive into this rich conversation, I want to take a moment to introduce Lori to our exceptional connectors who may not already know her. Laurie Thibert is a business leader, relationship specialist, and founder of Aligned Insights Matter, where she helps organizations develop high trust, high performing teams. And her leadership philosophy was shaped not only in boardrooms, but also in 2008 while leading a volunteer trip to Ghana, where she met a young boy whose parents had died. Oh my goodness. Soon she began the journey of becoming his mom. Their journey together strengthened her belief that high quality relationships are built when the relational fabric is strengthened. So, Lori, I'm going to turn it over to you to give us a little bit more background about your life because that bio is so intriguing, especially how you met your son and how you came to write this book. So, give us a little background. And then you were our spotlight speaker for our Exceptional Connections networking in June. And I think it would be lovely to have you just kind of um, do the Wayback Machine and share a little bit about the foundation of what you shared so that our listeners have that before we move forward.
Well, Cyndi, thank you so much for the invitation to join you again today and to expound on the CATR theory and all that it provides for us both personally and professionally. It has been quite a lovely experience getting to know you and the Exceptional Connections community. So, yes, I'm happy to jump in and share a little bit more about my background and my journey as it's brought me here. So I've got almost 30 years experience as a relationship development specialist in the corporate arena. Everything from account management, corporate accounts. I have owned three different startup companies and done quite a lot of philanthropic work. So I've been on the number of boards of directors from different nonprofit organizations. And throughout that whole experience, I've learned a lot about relationships because the relationship development role was truly my sweet spot. I was constantly tapped by our corporate teams to address some of the most challenging relationships that our organizations had. The largest one was an account that was worth over about $100 million to our company. And they had been upset with our team for 4 years. And it was my job to be able to get in there, get the relationship healed, and get us back on track. And we made many steps towards that success. And that was before I met my son. So at the point that I met my son, unexpectedly, over in Ghana, West Africa, when I was over there helping with water wells and working, building schools, unexpectedly, one day we got a call that one of the children at the local children's home had passed away. And that child was very close to the leader, the administrator of one of the schools we were working with. So we went there to be support. And it was on that journey that I met my son and very quickly realized that I was being called to be his mom. And he was about 8 at the time, and he is 27 now. So during that time, so he had called me mom for a year and a half. prior to the adoption being complete. I spent a lot of time over in Ghana, West Africa with him. We spoke on the phone multiple times a week. During that time, again, for about a year and a half, he had called me mom, though once, and we had a good relationship, though once he got here, his whole world was upside down. And it didn't matter how many support pieces I had in place to help him through that time. There were things that he was navigating, being bullied at school and just being overwhelmed with many, many aspects of what he was navigating. That even though I was a relationship development specialist and we were working with therapists, we were having a hard time identifying what he needed in order to feel seen, heard, understood, and valued. And I was constantly looking at it from the perspective of what do I need to change? Right? What is it that I can change in this relationship, in this recipe to help him with what it is that he needs? And we had a really hard time identifying that for about 4 years. And finally, it landed. And over the next few years, the things that I learned through our relationship really helped me to have a skill set that I could see the recipe of relationships in a different way than I had previously. So during his high school years, we had about 6 other teenagers, friends of his, that were navigating really big things. And they lived with us anywhere from 2 months to 2 years. And they would often come to me, knowing that my background is relationships, and say, Laurie, I don't know what just happened with my girlfriend, my best friend, teacher, boss, etc. Everything was fine, and now it's not. And I don't know what to do. So I needed to take all that experience that I had and wrap it up into a simple recipe to help them figure out for themselves, okay, what just happened and what do we need to do to fix it? And the CATR theory was born. So over the next several years, as I would constantly use that recipe to help them understand relationships, I actually started using it in other areas of my life as well, especially in the corporate arena. And I would see time and time again that we would take these really complex situations, and when we ran it through the CATR theory, it became pretty clear what the issue was. And from that point, we figured out what we needed to do in order to get challenging situations resolved. And the biggest thing, though, is to being able to then create high trust, high respect situations that could navigate the ups and downs of business. And when we use it in our personal lives, it helps to navigate the ups and downs of life as well, so that we can stay connected. That doesn't mean that we always see eye to eye on everything. We can agree to disagree, though we can create safe spaces for having those difficult conversations where we can grow together and we can respect each other in those differences, as long as we're operating within certain parameters that help to foster the connection in the relationship. And my
Mm.
son is now a couples coach, and he was saying to me about a year ago, Mom, we really need your voice out here. And after hearing that from him and from several of my colleagues, both personally and professionally, saying, Laurie, when are you going to write this down? I decided to write the CATR theory. And the CATR theory was born.
Wow. Wow, Lori, thank you for pedaling back and just giving us, a snapshot of your journey and how your recipe has evolved over the years, and to the extent that it's a book and it is actually a theory. So let's, for the sake of our listeners, let's talk about the CATR theory. Tell us what the acronym stands for.
You bet. Before I jump into what the CATR theory stands for, let me give you one other piece of context, because yes, it's called the CATR theory, though the CATR theory is actually based on science. And the science that it is based on is something called relational intelligence. Now, what relational intelligence is, and it will help, the understanding that will help to understand the framework for the CATR theory. So relational intelligence is the ability to understand, navigate, and elevate relationships, especially in complex environments. Now, where that's different from what some of the frameworks that many of us know, so we know what IQ is, which is measuring our intellect and our intellectual intelligence. EQ measures emotional intelligence, and that's where the focus has been on over the last couple of decades, helping people to understand, to say, what are my emotions in this situations and what are your emotions in the situations? And it's good for us to know that because then we understand where each other might be operating from. But that's different than understanding relational intelligence. And relational intelligence is how do we understand what's at play so that we can foster that connection. And the CATR theory is rooted in high relational intelligence. How do we navigate that connection between individuals, despite whatever the circumstances that are at play, so that we can work together in partnership in order to create healthy connection? So the CATR theory, what is it? It is a way to look at relationships to understand what's at play, how to build it healthy, when things start to crack, how to identify the crack, and how to repair it. So the analogy that I always gave the kids is that a relationship is like a table with four very strong legs. When those legs of the table are strong, you can stand on the table and dance on the table, invite your friends and family to come up and dance with you. And quite often that table is going to hold much more than it was ever designed to hold. The challenge is if one of those legs crack, it may break. And if it breaks, everything is at risk for failing. And those legs are not independent of each other. They actually build upon each other. So when you understand how the legs build upon each other, so how do the aspects of our relationship build upon each other, then we understand how to create that relationship to be very strong. And because it's interdependent, if a crack forms in one of the legs, then we can figure out at what point did the crack occur in the relationship and what do I need to do to fix it. And just like if you are the concept of cater, to cater a dinner party, if we had an event that we're hosting for our friends and family and we want it to be a very positive experience, quite often we're going to cater it. We're going to put that extra time and attention into catering the event. Likewise, with our relationships, if we want our relationships and that connection to be extra positive and a very good experience for everyone, we'll invest some extra time and attention into those relationships. We'll cater them. So the CATR, C-A-T-R, actually stands for the four legs of the table. The first and most important leg of any relationship is C, communication. When that communication is healthy and strong and has all the beautiful aspects of healthy communication, it's honest and open, transparent, we're not cutting corners, we are accepting of one another rather than forcing our expectations on other people. We're respectful in tone, especially when it's hard, and we're thoughtful, so we're not just coming and dumping on the other person, because if we do that, then that means it's about me and what I need, as opposed to consideration of what the other person may need and what the relationship together may need. When the communication leg is strong, and the second leg, accountability. Accountability for both what and how we've agreed to communicate, though also our actions. That we show up and we do what we say we're going to do, and we do it well and on time. We can only renegotiate it once or twice, otherwise the third leg won't develop well. When we are consistent in our communication and accountability, the third leg has a chance to form, and that's T, trust. When we trust each other, it doesn't mean we always agree on everything. What it does mean is that we consistently see how the other person shows up and we can count on them. And that we also create a safe space for that communication to happen so that we can trust that we will be supported in having those challenging conversations. When the T leg, the trust leg, is strong, over time the fourth leg has a chance to develop. And the fourth leg, R, is respect. When we respect each other, we're going to have each other's back. because when we respect each other, we want to see each other succeed. And we most often also want to see the relationship succeed. So we'll show up and we will be there for each other pretty much no matter what goes down up until a point. And the point is that what's being asked of us does not violate our core values. And the second thing is what's being asked of us is not beyond what we are able or willing to give. Because if it's beyond what we're able or willing to give, as much as we'd like to be there, we may not be in a position to be there. So if it doesn't cross that threshold, most often we will show up, even if it's not convenient, because we care about the other person and we care about the success of the relationship. So when those four legs are strong, we will have a healthy partnership to be able to work together through the ups and downs of whatever it is that's being thrown at us through life. In business, think about COVID time. Even as challenging as what it was, many businesses did their best to work together with the vendors or customers that they had. The customers would hold tight with those companies that they valued for as long as they could. There might come a certain point that they had to go in a different direction. Though if that relationship was strong, because they wanted to support each other getting through that time, they would show up to the best of their ability. And likewise, in our personal relationships, we think about the challenges when things get incredibly challenging at times. We do our best to keep hanging in, keep hanging in. There may come a point, and I talk about it in the CATR theory, sometimes we need to bless and release the relationship. However, if we can navigate the highs and lows because we have created healthy communication, healthy accountability, very good trust, and strong respect, we'll be there to navigate those challenging times.
Wow, that's a beautiful, beautiful explanation. I love that your cater theory, your recipe for relationships, as you call it, is such a simple yet profound tool that helps us to be able to figure out, like you say, what is and is not working in our relationships, and also to help us identify what we can fix to help the relationship really thrive and be all that it can be. So thank you for that foundational explanation because that really helps. And I love the way you started us off by really helping us to understand what relational intelligence is and why it's so important. So can you tell us a little bit more? You touched on it, but what is really the intersection now that you've laid out the cater theory? What is the intersection between relational intelligence and or RQ and AI?
I'd be happy to. So, the intersection between relational intelligence and artificial intelligence, or AI, is that AI is very good and robust at helping us figure out a lot of the aspects of the word just went out of my head, like technology and or um, skills that we may need to know. The area that it is not good at is when it comes to interpersonal relationships. AI does not handle relational intelligence, and it's not versed in that way. I just came across some information from a recent study out of Stanford, who's one of the thought leaders in the area of relational intelligence. And what they said in there is that relational intelligence is the most underappreciated innovation of our time. It's the power of human relationships to ignite human potential. And they go on to say, they said it's the intelligence of attunement, of care, of knowing, and knowing how to know each other. We might call it relational intelligence, the deeply human ability to build trust, navigate tension, repair ruptures, and create meaning with others. And it may be quietly rising as the defining skill of our age, the essence of what it means to remain fully human in a world increasingly governed by algorithms and automation. So as much as AI is really important tool for this time in helping us with many aspects of our lives. The one area that it is not well versed in, and it doesn't look like it ever will be at this point, is really being able to connect that human to human experience. So if we're talking specifically in a business setting, which is exceptional connections is about creating healthy and strong businesses and the connections therein, the relational intelligence really understanding how to elevate that human to human interaction and connection is going to be highly valuable. And when you put it alongside an understanding of how to navigate and use AI as a tool, those who marry those two aspects are going to exceed and excel during this time. Because the relational intelligence is not just about the relationships within our own internal teams. It's also with the relationships with our customers, with our vendors, with our boards of directors, with society as a whole. How are we connecting on those human to human interactions, especially when something goes down that's hard and when it gets complicated? How do we navigate those tensions to be able to understand what happened and what do we need to do to fix it?
Right. Wow. I have a visualizer speaking of a wheel with spokes. And each
Mhm.
of those different people that we reach out to, whether it's family, friends, your colleagues, your customers, your vendors, they're all a different spoke on that wheel. And we really need it to be balanced. Otherwise, we'll have a flat tire, right? The analogy of a flat tire. So that just came to mind as you're talking. But I really have to underline what you just shared. I think it's so important. And as important as and intriguing and as exciting AI is right now for all of us who are learning about it and exploring the opportunities and possibilities and just the things that it can offer our businesses to make it easier. We've learned, think about what we've been through in the last 6 years, what happened during the shutdown. I feel like we've learned that how important human relationships are, that nothing really takes the place of it. We
Mhm.
did Zoom meetings, exceptional connections continued on in lieu of our live events. We did 28 virtual events. We didn't miss
Mhm.
1 month. And it kept us going and it kept us alive on the other side of this. A lot of other networking groups didn't survive the 28 plus months of, of shutdown. But, I myself and others that I've spoken with, we've just really appreciated and value the opportunity to have interaction one-on-one with another human and be able to give hugs, be able to, look eye to eye. And again, we could do that with Zoom, but there's something really magical about being in somebody's presence, to be able to have those conversations and really be able to, um, I don't know if it's you're feeling the essence of that person, but just be in their presence in a way that we can't with technology.
Mhm. And that's something that you have built into your mission with Exceptional Connections. It's about the connection, it's about the collaboration, it's about the partnership. There's a certain amount of that can happen through Zoom, though the way that you all have approached this is really about that in-person connections, that you encourage people to get out and make those connections one-on-one. And that's an aspect that your team is already living, and understanding the value in that is what you're speaking about.
Yes, yes. So thank you for that. I appreciate it because we had a real life situation recently where I was not able to, for the first time in 17 years, attend a networking event. And with very little notice, champion connectors and members of our team stepped up and just took it on. And it was just really beautiful. It made me realize, you know, so many things. I really have gleaned so many lessons personally. But one is that you really, it's important for us to build those relationships before we need them,
Mhm.
to build that foundation of trust, to build those foundations. I'm, thinking about your CATR theory and the four legs, communication, accountability, you know, trust and respect. Those things need to be solid for a situation like unexpectedly happened where I was not able to attend the meeting and our team just flawlessly picked up the ball and ran with it. And from what I heard, they represented exceptional connections exceptionally, and so, I'm just so grateful for that. And reminders also what with collectively as a world, as a society, we all went through a challenging time where we weren't able to be in each other's presence safely. Um, and we came to appreciate it so much more. And I think that's the piece that really distinguishes it from AI, as much as there's lovely benefits and time saving and all of that. Um, so yeah, thank you so much for the work you're doing. It's so important. And I don't see that AI is going to replace human relationships in any way. It will, if if anything, I think it's going to really enhance it because we come to appreciate the opportunity to have meaningful relationships and develop them. And I love what you said. There's nothing right now, we hope there never is, that will replace that.
Mhm.
It's priceless.
It is indeed. And to your point about the way that your team was able to step up. So I was actually at the event you were speaking of, and I discussed that with your team. Your team has naturally been building the cater relationship, right? Because as you said, focusing on the communication, focusing on the accountability, building that trust, building that deep respect within each other. Because what happens on the other side of that respect is exactly what you're talking about. The way that we show up when someone else is in need that we care about, because you fostered that throughout. Now, here's the next piece that we haven't talked about yet. And that is, what do we do if something were to happen that didn't feel good, that a crack happens in one of the legs? How do
Mm.
you identify it, right? Because we can talk about all day long how it works when it's working well. To really use the tool is to be able to say, okay, something happened and it doesn't feel good. And I don't know what just happened, because I would have thought that we had a healthy relationship and that with the healthy relationship, everything would go smoothly. And for some reason, it didn't go smoothly. In your case, it did went very smoothly, but just let's have a hypothetical that something happens and it feels off and we're not sure what's at play.
Well, that
The
can I
rest,
just I just want to
sure.
interject. That hypothetical is called life. Because
So
it
true.
happens all the time. It's in our families, it's in with relationship with neighbors. There's always fractures, but I love the opportunity to look at it through your eyes, which I think your eyes are so wise and intuitive to be able to identify them as cracks that can be repaired instead of a leg that needs to be amputated, right?
Yes, so the analogy that we always use, and I didn't use this at the event, so I'm going to use it right now, is that to your point about the difference between a crack and a break. So if we're thinking about, let's just look at the communication leg, because the communication leg it's the foundation of everything. It is what all three other legs build upon. So if we're looking at the foundation leg like this, and we just say, well, do we have healthy communication? Yes or no? If the answer is quite often, oh, yes, we care about communication. We have healthy communication in our relationship, at home, at work. Well, what happens the second we have an off day for some reason and we get short with our partner, or we're a little bit discourteous at work or whatever? All of a sudden, we're thrown into a situation where it's like, oh, our communication is broken. How am I going to fix it? I don't know what just happened. Well, when we look at the communication just as a solo, either it's there or it's not, we're losing the effectiveness of the nuance. Because if we're looking at some of the different aspects, the honesty, the openness, that we're being vulnerable, that we're being transparent and we're not cutting corners, that we're being respectful in tone when it's hard, that we're being thoughtful, that we're listening to learn as opposed to just listening to have our turn to speak, when we're being positive as opposed to negative, when we're fully being present. These are some of the many aspects that go into healthy communication. Now, if I were to try to break that, it's even if I've had an off day and I was discourteous for some reason, I forgot to be respectful in tone because I was rushing, or I didn't tell the whole story because I got busy and forgot, or I was afraid of how they were going to respond, then I got a couple of cracks here. It's still going to hold pretty strong. But if I really wrap that relationship up with three of the things I just mentioned, listening to learn instead of just listening to speak, the power of truly being present and being positive instead of focusing on the negative, all of a sudden, these are like the secret sauce that'll wrap that leg up and it'll hold it tight, even though I was in my humanness. Now try to break it. It's going to hold while we repair those couple areas that we accidentally cracked. That's how you keep that foundational leg strong. But when we understand how it all wraps up together, then we have a framework for being able to really understand what's at play in each of the legs. So on the off chance a crack occurs, how do we figure out where the crack is so that we know what to fix? You start at the fourth leg, respect, because ultimately, if everything's healthy, we respect each other and all four legs are intact, right? So we start at the fourth leg, respect. If something feels off and we're not sure what it is, if we know what happened, you don't have to necessarily go through the whole process. You just address it. If you're not sure, each of the legs builds upon each other. So if something feels off with respect and you're not sure what it is, go back to leg number 3, trust. Something got broken in trust that's impacting the respect. If you're not sure what's happened in the trust leg, go back to the second leg. It's one of two things. Something regarding accountability, either with actions or the communication. If it was something regarding actions, one person or the other didn't show up and do what they said they were going to, or they just cut corners doing it, or whatever it was about actions that feels off, identify it and then work together to be able to fix it. And if it's communication, come all the way back to the communication leg and run it through what I call the hot art of communication. And those are some of the aspects that I had just spoken about. The honesty, being honest. H, honest. O, open. So we're being vulnerable and willing to communicate. T, transparent. We're not cutting corners. That's hot. Art. A, accepting of each other with agreements rather than throwing our expectations on the other person. We don't like it when other people place expectations on us, so we don't want to do that to someone else. Instead, we accept this is the wholeness of who this person is. They're operating the wholeness of their humanness. I'm operating in the wholeness of my humanness. Some days I do pretty well, some days not so good. So when we can understand where each other is operating from, in that being accepting of one another, it really helps to navigate relationships because we can have agreements around it. And when we have agreements, we want to put into place both ends of the agreement. If we do this, then this. If one of us chooses not to do that, then this is the results. So it takes the weight off. We don't need to get so upset about things because we agreed ahead of time. If we do it, then this. If one of us chooses not to do it, then that. Let that hold, that agreement, hold the container of the weight, especially with our kids, because that way we can unhook that tendency to get upset, which then impacts the next thing, which is R, the respectful in tone. Because we don't get upset so much, we just let I guess we need more clarity on our agreements.
Mm.
Okay.
Oh, I love
And
your
that's where kindness
perspective.
comes in. Go ahead.
Oh, I just love your perspective, especially what I want to really chew on here is operating the wholeness of our humanness. That's being kind to ourselves.
Hmm.
Just start there. Because I think sometimes when we're not kind to ourselves, then we become a mirror for others and we see their faults and whatnot because we're really looking at it from ourselves as well. It's very convoluted, but there's a lot of grace there and accountability as well in that statement. I appreciate that. So we talk about, obviously operating the wholeness of our humanness and giving ourselves grace, giving ourselves accountability and wanting to be kind. But you also talk about the cost of being unkind. How does that
Yes.
play into things here?
So a couple of different ways. One is that our US, both in the professional life as well as personal life, unkindness is playing out at every level of our society. In business, the SHRM data, the Society for Human Resources Management, is noting that US businesses are losing $2 billion per day. $2 billion per day due to incivility.
Hmm.
That looks like rudeness, terse emails, short, snippy comments amongst one another. And what's happening is when that happens and invades the culture, people start to disengage because they don't feel safe. And when they start to disengage, collaboration, partnership, all start to take a hit. And it impacts revenue because then people will choose to look for another job. And some employers right now will say, well, it's not impacting us so much because it's kind of with the unemployment that's happening right now, they say it's culling the field. It's okay that we lose a certain amount of talent because those are people that apparently didn't want to stay here anyway. So it's kind of taking care of the situation for them. The problem is that even if that may be true on some aspect, the people who do stay may not be engaging as fully as what they would have otherwise. They may be staying there because they don't have anywhere else to go. So kindness is truly being impactful right now. And in the Yale Women's Leadership Program, which was all rooted in relational intelligence certification that I got last fall, in that program, they spoke specifically to the importance of the type of leadership that is needed at this point in time. And what the research shows is that cultures that are rooted in such things as kindness and connection, that's where the collaboration happens. That's where the partnerships happen. And that's where the increased profitability comes for the companies that are embracing such things as kindness, connection, and collaboration. It's also playing out in the personal lives. Divorce rates are still quite high. They may be coming down from a few decades ago. They're still running at about 40% risk of divorce for a first marriage. And again, we would think that we would learn as we go. By the second and third marriages, it goes up to 73% risk of divorce for a third marriage. And 40% of our teenagers are currently expressing that they don't feel they're getting the social and emotional support that they need to navigate this time.
Well,
If we can incorporate such things as kindness, compassion, empathy to foster that connection, which is very much what the CATR theory is about, to help each other to feel seen, valued, hopefully understood, it makes all the difference in the connection, the trust, and the respect which can be built. And again, that's not something AI can fix for us. We need to do it, and we can do it. And that's the whole premise with the CATR theory, is that this does not need to be as hard as what we tend to make it. The recipe is actually quite simple. And one of the things we haven't quite talked about yet, and I talk about it when we do the workshops, and so the CATR theory book that you have is the Cliff Notes version of the more expanded book that will be coming out soon. that really takes a deeper dive. In order for people to understand how simple this theory is, we needed to have a simple book in order to just give the cliff notes, the high level, much like we're talking about how simple it can be when you look at the four legs and when you understand what goes into communication. But one of the things that's important to know, though, and we all know this because we've all been at a restaurant where the table rocked and it turns out the foundation underneath the table was not solid. And no matter how much you keep trying to wedge something under one of the legs, it still keeps wobbling because the foundation underneath is not solid. There's a few things that go into the foundation. And you can see this when people go to get married and or start a new business relationship. Quite often these three tenets are strong enough that they're wanting to move forward with the marriage or with the business. First thing is intent. Does each party have good intent for each other and for the success of the relationship? The second is interests. Do we have common interests or core values in common upon which to build? Because if we don't have anything in common, you can work on the four legs all day long. It's not really going to hold a lot of weight because if you don't have some points of common interest or core values upon which to connect, it's important to have those, at least a few things upon which you can build there. So intent, interest, and the third thing is investment. Do we have, is each party invested with time and energy towards the success of the relationship? Again, with a marriage or a business partnership that's starting out, quite often those three are intact. What happens though over time? When the cracks in the relationship start to occur and accumulate over time, that intent, that good intent for each other might become cracked to the point where people don't have good intent for the person that they said that they loved and they said that they would be there in partnership with for long term. They may not have any further common interests once the kids have graduated, or the business has gone in different directions, so the vision that the partnership started upon, that may not be intact any longer. And because if those cracks have occurred, the investment may no longer be there, or it may be one-sided. So when we're feeling the cracks, the recipe for the repair, I established it that you need to check the foundation first. Check the foundation. What is the situation with regard to the mutual intent, interest, and investment? And I believe there's a fourth aspect that I haven't fully landed on yet, and I believe it's around the aspect of integrity. And the integrity being, are we showing up and doing consistently, are our words and our actions in alignment? And is it in alignment? If you look at the definition of integrity, it has to do with our core values. The challenge is that there's aspects of this that can be subjective. So for me to have that as part of the foundation, I haven't fully reconciled that yet. I believe it's in there. I just need to really understand from a like a contextual standpoint that it's solid in how I'm presenting that. It is an aspect and an important aspect because you can have some of those other things that are quite strong, but if that integrity piece is not there or is not solid, it does impact the relationship.
Wow, I love the alliteration of your foundation, with being able to touch on the intent, the interest, the investment, and potentially if you add on the integrity, because I think that is, it seems without really going into it at the depth that you are, it seems like it is a solid piece, whether it's a three-legged stool or a four-legged table, both have that foundational element of stability that's important
Mhm.
and things to identify within that. Well, I want to make sure that we have an opportunity to open. I mean, there's so much we can talk about, and I appreciate all of the thought, how thoughtful you are about each of these different components and the analogies that you've created to help us to understand, like with the integrity of a leg, it's not just that leg. There's so many different components that go into that, and then the wrapping around of different things that strengthen it as well. So those analogies are really beautiful, Lori. Thank you for taking the time to really flesh that out, because it helps us all to be able to just identify it in ways that we don't always look at relationships. It's relationships can get really muddy, but there's a foundational element to which, if we can look at it from that perspective, we can see it much clearer with less emotion and be able to just kind of peel back the layers and be able to, you know, strengthen that relationship. I'm not sure how this, before we transition to questions, and so I'm going to give everybody an opportunity to um, either ask Lori a question, and this is a great opportunity, or share an insight or epiphany or aha from what she's shared either today or at the event we had last week. But when you were sharing the different um, the perspective about kindness and how it impacts relationships. What occurred to me is in sales, um, the number one reason that somebody leaves a place of business, chooses not to do business with somebody. A lot of times we think it's of the product or it's the service, but really what the core of different studies have found, that the reason people leave a place of business and do business with someone else is because they don't feel appreciated. And while you were talking about the kindness piece and how that impacts relationships with, say, employers and employees, or family members, or neighbors or friends, appreciation and kindness are underrated. And I think that's something that we really, as working on these human to human relationships and valuing them now more than ever before, I think that's something we need to get back to.
It's powerful. The appreciation and kindness are foundational for providing safe space for people to feel seen and acknowledged and respected. So it's built into the importance of that. One of the things that David Brooks' work talks about is that human connection is the key to happiness. And I believe what you're speaking to is that kindness and that appreciation is what cuts through so much for people to feel in connection in a positive way with another human being. So if someone doesn't feel happy and they don't feel safe and they don't feel seen and valued, why would they ever stay? Why would they stay in business as a customer of a company where they're not feeling that appreciation for their efforts? Because we can take our money to any organization and we're
Right.
choosing to do business with that place of business. And if we're leaving there feeling not valued, not appreciated, not professional, not kind in the interaction, kindness, then we have a tendency to kind of react and mirror what it is that's coming our way. So then we often escalate it as opposed to choosing to what we want to see. Like we often expect someone else to show us appreciation and to show us kindness. It's that expectation. But the question is, how are we going to show up regardless of how the other person shows up? Am I going to stay rooted in how I show up into the world with kindness and appreciation so that I can break that cycle? We can still hold our boundaries. Imagine holding our boundaries rooted in kindness as opposed to being a jerk,
Right.
right? How quickly could we start to heal our world? And that's one of the other things about this framework is that you can take this framework and apply it to the relationship we have with ourselves and also the relationship within the greater world, within our society and within the planet. So being able to The challenge that I would leave to everyone here before we jump into questions, etc., is over the course of the next week, just start with today, each day over the course of the next week and beyond, if you'd like, anything that comes up in conversations with anybody in your sphere that has to do with a situation that's going on, there's a good chance there's a relationship aspect to it that's at play. Cater it. Run it through the CATR theory and take a look and see if you can get to the ingredients for what's causing it to be cracked. And if you can figure out what aspect is it that's cracked, then maybe you can work together to figure out, okay, what could we do to fix it in this situation? Start with the relationships that are a little bit easier first until you start to gain traction, because we all know we probably have one or two relationships that it's like your head just spins when you start to think about it. Start with the easier ones first until you start to get the hang of it. Oh, look, that was so easy. I can see. So, this person spoke disrespectfully to that person. Of course, it broke the communication leg. That broke the accountability leg. That broke the trust leg because it wasn't creating a safe space. Oh, that's the piece you need to go back and repair. Or the other person. And the thing is we could say, oh, they need to come and repair it. It's not on me to repair it. You know what? It's on us to show the other person grace, right? Because they're showing up in the wholeness of their humanness. And we hope that someone will show us grace in the times that we show up in the wholeness of our humanness.
Right.
So
Wow.
let it start with us.
Absolutely. And it's just like when we think of, and I'm going to do this on on camera, but for those who are listening in podcasts, I want you to imagine you're pointing at somebody. You're pointing to them saying you're wrong, you're not being accountable, you're not communicating, you're not being respectful. But the reality is what's pointing back at you? Three other fingers, maybe four if your thumb is twisted like mine. Right? So we need to really take personal responsibility, is what I'm hearing you say first and foremost for in our relationships. And we can't change anybody else. That's what I'm hearing through this entire conversation. We have to be aware and step up, and we can't expect the other people to, like read your book. We're needing to be able to model this, and that's the beautiful thing of what you're creating is a recipe that is very easy to understand, yet very complex in the human dynamic. And so
It
thank you so
grows with
much for
you.
that.
Oh, you're so welcome. Thank you for acknowledging that. The idea with the CATR theory is you start with the simple four legs, the CATR.
Hmm.
And then you can it grows with you. Like the more that you become versed on just understanding the CATR, the communication, accountability, trust, and respect. And when something feels off, then work your way backwards through it to find where it is and work to fix it. And as you grow with that, then you start looking at the next step. The next step would be understanding those beautiful dynamics of communication, right? The hot art of communication.
Hmm.
As you become more comfortable with that, then we start to look at the foundation. How is the foundation playing out? So that you don't feel like you need to remember it all at one time. Let it grow with you. And you can
Beautiful.
start following me on the.cater.theory on social media because I've been on hiatus there for about a month. In the next, there's a number of videos and such that are up already that may help you with this. And I will begin posting again very soon. And then from a business aspect on LinkedIn, it is specifically with regard to my business, Aligned Insights Matter, or you can look me up, Laurie Thibert, on LinkedIn. And there will be more uh, business leadership education videos and training I'll be doing about the CATR theory. So if that helps anyone,
Yes, thank you for giving that information. And do go on Amazon and check out her little Cliff Note book to whet your appetite and be able to really dive into this beautiful topic and the tools that the recipe that you provide us with to be able to strengthen our relationship. So feel free to unmute yourself. Again, if you have any questions for Lori in the next few minutes or epiphanies, ahas. So Gail, take it away.
Okay, there were two things that came to mind, or one is kind of a question. Well, I'll give you the two. The first one was when you were talking about integrity, my thought was that really walks hand in hand with accountability in many, many ways. And so I think that's great to have in there. The second thing was when you were talking about agreements, especially like with kids, but agreements between two people. And if you do this, this happens. If you don't do this, this happens. And what I was thinking was, especially with kids and teenagers, they need to have buy-in on those agreements. And I'm assuming that it's going through that CATR theory, the CATR theory, developing that communication, accountability, trust, and respect, where you begin to get buy-in so that you're not just saying, hey, here's what happens. If this doesn't get done, this is what happens when you've asked them to do something and it's not happening. So could you speak a little bit to that?
I would be happy to, Gail. Those first off, thank you for your feedback regarding how you see the integrity piece fitting in. I will take note of that. And the second thing, yes, regarding teenagers and anyone, first off, when we're building the agreements, it is very good to get the buy-in and you develop those agreements together so that each person is vested in that this is what we agreed to, and it's not coming from you, oh, you're putting that agreement upon me. Even if it has to do with this is the foundation of the agreement, we need to work together to figure out if this is kept, then this happens. And if this is not kept, then this happens, to get the buy-in for what that would potentially look like. And sometimes you learn to negotiate a little bit on the structure of what the agreement is so that both people can get behind it. And sometimes if it's a whole family, then it's more than just those two people. The way that it always worked for me with that house full of teenagers, and you got to realize that there was one point that I had 4 17-year-old boys, or between 15 and 17, and I was a solo parent during this time. So navigating the agreements, what worked for me with that is that I would constantly bring it back to the communication, accountability, trust, and respect. So why I need us to communicate here is so that I know that you understand and that I understand you. This is your opportunity to be heard, right? In the communication aspect. In order for us to build trust, and when there's trust there and we have respect for each other, then this happens. You want to stay out later. I need to know that we are keeping the communication open, that you're going to text me, let me know if something is up. We need to have accountability. We need to have that trust, and ultimately it provides respect. Over time, when there's more respect, because that trust has been kept, that's what allows us to move your curfew time later, or whatever it is. It always comes back to the 4 legs of the framework and what the impact is when one of those cracks occurs, when the communication doesn't happen, when curfew is broken, when whatever the agreement was, that there were going to be no girls in the house, right? What doesn't matter, whatever it is, it always comes back to the impact on those 4 legs and where the crack occurred, and then what do we need to do to be able to fix it. Do we have time for a quick story?
Sure. I just want to say
No.
one thing. I
Yeah.
love the way that you just tied a bow around the whole conversation we've just had in those few minutes and with the brilliant question that Gail asked, because it's a real life application of everything we've talked about thus far. So, yes, go ahead.
So it was the aha moment that this whole recipe was actually working. My son was about 15, 16 at the time. And it was the first time that he was asking to walk the mile down the street over to the high school with his group of friends to go watch the baseball game. And I said, go ahead. Here's the curfew. You need to be back by 8 o'clock, etc. They walked in the door at 8 o'clock exactly. And I was like, okay, well, how'd it go? And one of his friends says to me, Lori, you're going to love this, because he knew me. He'd spent enough time at our house. one of the boys, I'll call him T, T, he wanted to go hang with the girls. And T kept saying, oh, come on, let's go hang with the girls. And Osei said, absolutely not. We're going to be back on time. If you want to go hang with the girls, T, you go hang with the girls, but I am not. I am not about to break my mom's trust because it's going to take me a long time to repair it, and I am not about to have to do that. So do your thing, T, but we're going. And sure enough, T was right there in stride with him. And that was the moment that I knew that all those discussions that we had had around communication, accountability, trust, and respect was working.
Wow. That is beautiful. And really, what is underneath that is the communication of you being able to, over the years, being able to identify respect and trust and how he has to earn it back. He is aware of that.
Mhm.
We don't always
Exactly.
have those communications that clear that they know that it's not just mom's going to yell at me or I'm going to be grounded, but there's a deeper consequence to not being your word. He agreed to be back by 8, and if he wasn't, it's like, oh, she's going to yell at me. Oh, I'll get something taken away, a privilege taken away. But there was something more that was at stake there. So I really love all the thought and the intention behind not only your recipe and your book, but you, Lori, who you are as a person, and the gift you are to all of us to be able to help us to break down these things that are foundational for relationships and communication, but do it in a way that really helps us to not miss those important pieces or ingredients in that recipe.
Thank you, Cyndi, so much. And imagine as you start practicing this in your family life, also use it for any situations at work. Because these big overwhelming things that will happen at work, and it impacts our livelihood, right? It can impact, if you're a business owner, it impacts your profitability if there's dysfunction within your team. If it is that you work on a team and you get to the point that you can't handle going to work and engaging with the team, just keep catering it, just like the kids did in the personal situations. Cater it at work so that you can have those discussions to say, this is what's impacting my ability to be able to show up and be fully engaged, so that potentially, whether it's your boss, your uh, business owner partner, or your customers or your vendors, to be able to say, in order for us to maintain this partnership, this is the crack I see forming, and I'd really like to work together with you to repair it.
So I know we've gone over a little bit here, but I just want to give anybody that has one more question before we wrap it up, because this has been such an intriguing conversation and I've enjoyed it so much. And I'm sure there's lots of others that are listening that are benefiting from this as well. You as well, out there
Yes, indeed.
listening. So anybody else want to unmute themselves and ask a quick question or share an epiphany that they've received from this conversation? Kathy.
I just want to say I wish I had heard this 20 years ago. I wish I had this information when I was raising my boys, and I adopted a older boy as well, and dealing with all the things that came with helping him adjust from not having a family to having one, and what being in a family actually means. I wish I had had this type of support then. It's brilliant, simple but brilliant.
Kathy, thank
And
you
I'm
so
gonna buy
much.
your book tomorrow, or actually, I'm going on Amazon today and buying it because it's good stuff.
Beautiful. And it's in audible form too. So if you want to do it and just play it around the house, then the kids might hear it at the same
Yes.
time.
Yeah. If they
So
only
Kathy,
lived with me still.
oh, that's right. They're adults now, aren't they?
They are. Yeah.
Thank
And
you for your feedback.
they're lovely.
I have met you. I know you, how wonderful you are, and it doesn't surprise me at all that they're lovely. Well done, Mom.
Well, thank you
But
so much. So, Lori, in closing, one of the things I appreciate most about your book, since we're talking about, getting your book and having the tools that you provide and the recipe, is that it takes, something many people find confusing, relationships, right? And navigating those relationships and turns it into such a practical framework. So, what inspired you to create a model that allows people to diagnose and repair relationship cracks before they become fractures? Thank you for closing our conversation with some insights into your motivation for writing your book.
That's a great question, Cyndi. And I will say it has to go to what Kathy was just speaking of the challenges that at times were so overwhelming that were very difficult to figure out when relationships were my area of specialty, even working with the therapist and not being able to figure out what was at play. And through lived experience, figuring out what worked and how a recipe that took something that could be so complicated at times that is really simple, not always easy to implement. It's very simple to visualize, to remember, and to call upon, because information is only as valuable as what it can be recalled in the moment to be utilized as it's needed. And the CATR theory provides that. It provides it in the 4 legs. It provides it in the foundational framework when you understand that level. And when you get to understand, even at a rudimentary level, what goes into healthy communication, and you start to understand how to see the cracks and how to repair the cracks, right? It's a very simple framework that can help bridge the divides and heal the cracks that are happening real time in our individual lives, personally, professionally, as well as in our society. Being able to bridge the divides that are happening in our society right now. And when there were so many people that kept asking me to put it in written form, I knew that it was time. It was time to do that so that we can heal our world together. The more that we can use it and share it, this is not about ego getting it out there. What it is that I know that I'm here to be a conduit for goodness being created in our world. And it's time for me to fully embrace that and share it wherever I can in order to help life not have to feel so hard. That we have some tools, when we understand the tools and we can use it, because it is pretty simple. And that was the whole idea behind being able to put the CATR theory out in the little book first before the full book so that people can grow with it. If you find the little book helpful and you want more information, the more in-depth one's coming. And in the meantime, just keep watching. I'll be on podcasts and other venues to be able to explain this that can support you between now and the time that the second book is. It's about 75% finished right now.
Oh, beautiful. Well, Lori, thank you for listening to that still small voice and following your own intuition and being able to provide us with such a beautiful recipe and book. And I love Cliff Notes. Remember our college days? We lived on Cliff Notes, right? So being able to have an acronym that is so clear is important because you can have a brilliant acronym, but if you can't remember identify communication, accountability, trust and respect, if you can't just be able to have it roll off your mouth, it's not going to be as effective. So you've really found a beautiful theory that we can easily go to as a tool that we can use, a simple tool that we can use. So I just want to be able to, anybody who's interested, if you're interested in Laurie's book, go to Amazon. It's on Amazon, right? As well as your website, alignedinsightsmatter.com, or they can go to CATR Your Relationships, and that's CATRY, CATR yourrelationships.com. And your contact information will be in the description down below. So, Laurie, any parting remarks before we sign off here?
Just thank you again for the opportunity to share this time together. Please keep letting your light shine. It is incredibly beautiful. Each one of you let your light shine, and know that the more that we can give grace to ourselves and grace to one another during these, at times, very challenging times, whenever you have a question of something that's at play, cater it and see if you can take something that feels complex, make it simple. And what we're actually doing is making love visible in the world.
I love that. That's so beautiful. Well, thank you. And with that, I just want to remind everyone to remember to make every connection an exceptional connection. Signing off. Thanks so much.